Good evening and thanks for coming by. My name's Mike and tonight I'm going to be working on my TRX4 K5 Blazer. This video is actually going to be part 2 in an ongoing upgrade series on this particular truck. In part 1 last week I went through the install of a Samix brass knuckle, portal cover, and scale brake rotor kit. Tonight I'm going to go ahead and continue on with that, and I'm going to install the matching rear set. Now this one on the rear is strictly the portal cover and the scale brake rotors. The front kit actually involved the entire portal housing, steering knuckle and everything. They do make a bigger kit than this that has more pieces in it, just like the front, both sides of the portal housing. I just didn't feel that it was necessary. This one's going to be a pretty quick video compared to the first one. If you haven't watched the first video, I would recommend maybe go back and watch that one first. I go pretty in depth into taking apart the front axle, completely rebuilding the portals. In the back kit, pretty much all I'm going to have to do is pop the portals off, take off the top cover, and replace it with the brass cover and install the scale brake rotors. It should be a pretty quick process compared to the front. I don't think I'm going to need to really remove anything for access, so it should be pretty quick and easy. The truck so far is very lightly modded. I did not start the video series when I first got the truck. I've actually had this truck for a while. I really haven't done much to it. It's become my favorite little just fun trail truck. So far the mods beyond the brass pieces that we put on the front last week, about the only other mods to this truck are the scale winch. It has ARB diff covers. The most obvious are going to be the Pitbull Rock Beast on the SSD Steel D windows, and these do have Crawler Innovations foams in them. I got light buckets. I've painted the inside of the body black, but all the electronics so far are still stock. From here on out, I'm going to go ahead and try to document everything I do to this truck. Hopefully when I'm done, it's going to be a really capable rig. These things are pretty capable out of the box, but there are a few places that they could definitely use upgrades. So I'm going to try to walk through all that stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on this week's install of the Samix brass portal covers on the rear. At the end of the video, I'll give a little preview and show some parts that I'm going to be installing in the next video that I've already got planned. So to get started on this project, I'm going to go ahead and remove the back wheel, and then I should be able to access the bolts for the rear portal and just pull the entire portal off and disassemble it. Should be very easy, very quick install. Okay, now that I've got the wheel off, there are 2 bolts that hold this portal to the axle. There's one up top and one down below. And if I go ahead and remove these 2 bolts, the portal will slide right off the axle. Okay, now I've got those 2 bolts out of the way. Let's just go ahead and slide this off. And there it is. Axle actually came with it that time, but I'm just going to go ahead and pop that back in there because I'm not going to be doing anything with that. Okay, so now that I have the portal housing off of the axle, the first thing I need to do to get the case apart is to remove the hex. Just remove the pin there, slide the hex off. Now you've got 2 screws on the front of the portal housing and 6 on the back. So I'm just going to take the 2mm driver and I'm going to remove all those, and then I'll just be able to separate the 2 portal halves and replace that front cover. Now that I've got all the screws out of the portal cover, I can go ahead and separate the 2 halves. This gear just presses right out from the front. Set that aside. And this one here, this gear and bearing, is going to press out from the back. Now I don't necessarily need to take that gear out to complete this, but I'm just going to go ahead and clean these up and put some fresh grease on them while I've got them apart. And what I like to use is this cheap marine grease from your local auto parts store. And I'll just put a nice coating of grease on there. Doesn't need to be packed full. A lot of times I will actually pack these probably more full than they need to be, because I believe it somewhat helps to keep the water out, because I like to run through water. But it really doesn't take much grease. Just as long as these have enough grease on them to keep them running smoothly, that's really all you got to do. I'm also going to go ahead and remove the two bearings in this front portal axle half, and the easiest way I've found to do that is just tap them on the bench once or twice, and sometimes they'll fall right out like that one did. But if not, you can just press it out, or this one I can actually press out. But if it's one of the ones like this one here, if you tap it on the bench, then it'll just give you room to get a pickup under it. We'll just set those off to the side because we're not going to be needing those anymore. Alright, now that I got the gears all greased up, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall them in the rear portal half. I need to go ahead and press these bearings back in the new front portal cover, and then I can reattach the two portal halves. And one thing to note on this is that the 6 screws that you took out of the back and the 2 in the front are all the same size, so you don't have to be worried about getting them mixed up, keeping them separated when you take them out. And again, I'm just going to run them down with my power driver, and then I'm going to go back with my hand driver and cinch them down. Now I can go ahead and reinstall my hex. And one thing to note on the hex is one side has this little lip on it. You want to make sure that that goes down towards the portal. Okay, now that that's back together, we can move on to reinstalling the scale brake rotor. One thing to note on the rotor installation is that there are 2 different size screws. They both take a 1mm or 1.5 millimeter hex driver, but there is a larger screw that goes in this single hole in the bottom, and the 2 smaller ones will go in top. And anytime that I have a screw that is going into metal, I go ahead and I just put a little dab of blue Loctite on there, and that's going to keep that screw from backing out on me. There's 2 different ways you can install these rotors. You can put it to where you have the caliper facing the front, or you can have it to where you have the caliper facing the rear. And quite honestly, I think it's probably just personal preference. I'm going to go ahead and face mine to the rear just because that's how I did the front. If I wanted to be, really crazy and scale about it, I would get on the internet and I would see which way that they would normally point. However, a old K5 Blazer like this never came with disc brakes on the back anyway, so I don't really think it matters. I'm just going to match them up to what I've already did and be done with it. Wipe that extra Loctite off there, and there's our completed portal housing. I'm just going to go ahead and get that reinstalled, put the wheels back on, and she'll be ready to go. Reinstallation of the portals is going to be just the exact opposite of what we did to take them off. Just line up that axle, reinstall these 2 screws on the back. Okay, now that I've got both portals back on the truck, all I've really got to do is reinstall the wheels and tires, and it's complete. Looks pretty good. It's going to add a little bit of weight, but not too much to the back. I don't need a whole lot back there, just something to balance it out a little bit. I do like the look of the scale brake rotors. The only thing I don't really care for is this red anodization on the calipers. I will probably at some point go back and remove these calipers because there's 2 screws on the back and those will actually come off the rotor. I'm probably going to remove those and paint those something that looks a little more natural. I don't know what color. I may paint them gray. I may go back and paint them red, but if I do, it'll be a different, darker red. I just don't think that looks very natural. You're not going to have aluminum calipers on a truck like this in real life. And there it is, all back together. And I think all start to finish, the whole project took maybe 15-20 minutes. So it's a quick little mod that can be done in an evening, and hopefully it'll add a little bit of performance. These trucks are just a little bit top heavy because of the portal axles. I think makes it worse. So in my opinion, if I can get just a little bit of weight down low on the wheels, pretty much as low as you're going to get it on the truck, then that might help balance it out just a little bit. And it kind of looks pretty cool. I don't like all the brass looking pieces, but being that these are black, they blend in pretty well, and the scale brake rotors just add a little bit of realism to it. But that's pretty much going to do it for tonight's video. As I said, next week I've actually got another project that I'm going to start on this. I'm going to do steering mods. So go ahead and watch for that one. And what I'm going to be doing, I've got a ProTech PTK 130T steering servo, and the factory steering servos in these TRX4s, I'm wanting to say they're about 120 inch-pounds of torque. This one should give me somewhere, I mean, it's rated between 288 and 355 depending on voltage. So realistically, somewhere around 300, it's going to at least double the torque of the factory servo. So should improve the steering quite a bit. And one thing that I probably should have done the day I bought the truck, and highly recommend whether you're going to do a steering upgrade or a servo upgrade or not, definitely one thing that these trucks need are a steering servo arm upgrade. Now this is the metal Traxxas steering arm, so I'm going to go ahead and install this along with the ProTech. The ProTech does come with one, but it's blue anodized aluminum, and again, I don't think the anodized aluminum stuff looks very realistic, so I'm just not even going to use that one. I'm going to go ahead and use the Traxxas part. But even if you're going to keep the stock servo, this is a really great upgrade. So again, watch for that video next week, and if this was at all useful, please like, subscribe to the channel, and if people keep watching, I'll keep making the videos. Thanks.